computer. All right, here we are. We're live here with Zach Zaromatidis and my wife, Melanie Campanis. I'm Paul Campanis. Melanie and I are in Nashville, Tennessee, and Zach is in upstate New York. And so it's May 28th, 2020, and we're going to talk about Zach's story about his genealogy and his Greekness. And so I'll let you take it away, Zach, and tell us this amazing story.
Yeah, sure thing, Paul. Sorry about that. Hold on. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so I'm Zach, and I'm born and raised in Long Island, New York. And I started my genealogy research sometime around my birthday, July 15th of 2019. And prior to that, I'm an actor, and prior to that, I got in a role in a national tour of a Broadway musical called Bandstand. That was about a World War II veteran coming home and adjusting back to civilian life and finding music and learning how to cope with his PTSD with other veterans. It was a very powerful show. I'd seen it before, and I was really lucky to be a part of it. I was looking in my research to see if I had any relatives who had served, but I never really found anything. And I kind of put that on the back burner. But I all of a sudden got this urge to start digging on my own family research. So I went on familysearch.org and I just typed in, my last name, Zaromatidis, and I found a couple things. And then I typed in my mother's maiden name, Klutsis. And I found a bunch of stuff. My great-grandfather, Francis, took a lot of censuses back then, and I kept seeing all these names. My grandfather, Dino, was one of them. But a name that I kept seeing more and more was a Nicholas Klutsis, and I wasn't sure who that was. It eventually dawned on me reading these documents. This was my grandfather's older brother. I had grown up thinking that my grandfather was the oldest of his siblings. I thought he was the oldest, but he wasn't. He had a brother who was 1 year his senior, and his name was Nicholas. Nicholas Klutsis was a Marine who fought in World War II at the age of 23, which is how old I was and I am. And he fought in the same places as my character did in the show. So obviously that sparked a great interest in me, and I kind of wanted to find out more and more about him, this pretty much forgotten member of my family that wasn't talked about. So I asked my mother at first, and I said, "Mom, do you remember your dad talking about a brother that died young?" And she goes, Oh yeah, at some point, he used to mention that he did have a brother. I didn't know if he was older or younger, but there was another brother. And I don't recall him talking about it much, which seemed to have been a common theme back then about, tragedy as a whole, not wanting to talk about things that really pained them. My grandfather didn't talk about how he lost his own father at a really young age, and I'm sure he didn't want to talk about how he lost his brother at 22. The more and more I kept kind of doing my research on him, the more and more other family members start to remember these little bits of information. Like over the course of time, I kept discovering one thing and another thing. And all of a sudden my cousin Minna was like, wait, I think my mother kept some of his stuff. So I went over to her house and I got to see some pictures of him. And in that, because of all the censuses and stuff, I found out, where he served and everything. And right before I left and started rehearsals for the show, my cousin Minna found his cross that he would wear. And I actually wear it now, and I wore it in the show. Here, I'll get it close. That was his cross. And it was really powerful to receive that. And I wore it in the show as part of my costume too. The incredible thing is that the show I was a part of was all about remembering. Like we go to theater, we go to film or whatever art to forget about the outside world and the pains that we feel every day. But the nice thing about the show I was a part of is it's a show about remembering those who have served the country or remembering those who we have lost in any way, shape, or form. And for so long, my great uncle Nico was forgotten. He was a soldier that, died so young and didn't get the chance to leave, as big of a mark in the world as he possibly could have. And And because of this show, the themes of the show ended up connecting directly to my own life, that I now had this person who was with me as I was doing it. And he was kind of metaphorically brought back to life because of my research and because of this show. So it was kind of a really beautiful moment of like, not only is this my first, break as doing my dream career, but it's also the first time I had ever felt so deeply connected with my Greek heritage and my Greek roots. So it was this perfect accumulation of stuff that kind of hit me at once. And and there was a lot of weird coincidence, like as I told you, like he was 23 when he died, and I was 23, and I am 23, and my character that I play, Donnie, he was 23, and on January 12th, which is the day my great uncle Nico was born and died, he died on his birthday in 1949. On that day, we had a show in Ohio, which is where our show takes place. It takes place in Cleveland, Ohio. So it was this really weird, like, not only is it my great uncle's birthday, but it's also we're in the spot where this show takes place. So that show, I don't think I was ever more excited for a show than that one while I was on tour. We did 100-something performances, and we did awesome theaters and stuff. But that show somewhere in Cleveland, Toledo. Somewhere in Ohio. It was in Toledo, Ohio. I felt him with me the whole time. Like I felt him like guiding me in a sense. And like, it was this beautiful feeling. And like, because of all these crazy coincidences all happening at once. And I had posted about it on.
Was the show?
What was that?
Was the show planned to be there on that day because of, like, I don't know, like, did they plan to have a show there because of the play being set there?
Yeah, I mean, they had a like the tour, the schedule of the tour was all there in place, but it could have been any day, But January 12th was the day that we were in Ohio, which is
that is Melanie's birthday, is also January 12th. So that goes.
Oh my! Wow, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's again another crazy coincidence.
Yeah.
I posted about it on January 12th, saying on my Instagram, on my Facebook, that this is a really important show for me today because it's my great uncle who I discovered because of the show. And then reporter Thomas Floyd at the Washington Post saw that post, and he reached out to me like a couple weeks later and said, "Hey, your story is really amazing. Would you like to sit down and talk about it?" And I was like, "Well, of course. I would love to sit down and talk about my heritage, essentially, at the Washington Post." And right when we got to Washington, D.C., we did a week of shows at the National Theater in Washington, D.C. And right when I got there, the story was out. So there was a lot of people coming up to me at the stage door saying, "Hey, I read your story. It was so beautiful. I had a great uncle that served in World War II that died really young, and it really resonated with me." Or I had my grandfather served, and he died really young, and whatever it may be. And all of a sudden, this guy that was forgotten, my great uncle who was forgotten, was now in the Washington Post. His face is in the Washington Post for the country to see. So like that was like it's beyond me. And when Thomas, the reporter, he came to the show and he gave me a copy of the newspaper, and I got to open it up and see his face.
Wow.
And I just started crying because I was like, I'd said, like, for so long he was forgotten, and now he's in the Capitol's newspaper.
That's amazing.
So like it is an experience that I will cherish forever.
So do you know where he died?
He died here. So what ended up happening to him was, because he fought in the Pacific, a lot of soldiers ended up getting malaria, and he came back in 46, but apparently he had struggled with it for the subsequent years following, and he died in 49 due to complications of the malaria he had contracted.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what year was he born?
What was that?
What year was he born?
26. January 12th, 1926, and he died January 12th, 1949. Yeah, it's terrible, and I understand why. You know, I never got to meet my grandfather. My grandfather died in '89, so it was before my mom was really young. So I never got to meet him or my grandmother on my mother's side. But I'd always felt some kind of kinship with him, that just naturally. It was just a thing. He was such an important figure in my family before he passed away. He was talked about so frequently, and it was always bewildering to me. You know, I thought, you know, why did my grandfather not speak about this much? But I think it was just a sign of the times, really. Like, you know, back then, it didn't really talk about things like that, things that pained you so much, and especially losing, you know, who I think was someone who was incredibly close with, you know, his brother and his older brother, and the head of the family.
Was he wearing the cross and chain when he died? You know?
Oh boy, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Perhaps, like, and that's I know, you know what's weird, Melanie? I never really thought about that. So wow, that's kind of he could very well have. And that's the thing, you know, that's why I want to keep doing this research, because there's so many questions unknown, you know.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you feel this way, Paul. Like I always think, like, had I started this research a couple years earlier, who would I have gotten a chance to talk to? Like my great aunt, who lived to 101 years old. She was my great grandmother's sister. If she was around, you know, she has the same birthday as me, July 15th. She was 101 when she died in like 2016 or 2017. If she was around while I was doing this, and the information I would have gotten, like the little stories I would have heard, I try my best not to regret anything. You know, how was I to know? You know, God has a plan for everything, right? So there's no way I could have known then. But like I always think, boy, if my aunt kind of was alive.
We're losing this information at an exponential rate, and the sooner we, you know, get documents, get interviews with people, get things on video, the more we'll have for our children, our grandchildren, and for the future generations. So I think you make a really great point that we are losing it quickly, and you're doing a lot, as are others. And I think the pandemic has been because we're in the middle of a really bad pandemic now with the coronavirus. And I think a lot of the Greeks I've noticed online are really digging into their family trees, their genealogy, and they're on the computer, they're with their families, and because we're all stuck at home. And what a great opportunity to get on some of these websites and to email back and forth, to get on Facebook, and to
well, let's not forget your relationship, because like to anybody watching this, they might just think that you're long lost cousins, or that your cousins, you've known each other for years.
Yeah.
But explain how you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So yeah, of course. So in my research, I know my family spells Kloutsis with a C, Cloutsis. And while I was researching, that's just how I spelt it. Then I came across like some kind of informational tip that, like, if you try spelling your last name different ways, especially if it's a complicated last name, like perhaps you'll get different things. So I said, you know what, maybe we'll try it with a K. And I typed in Kloutsis with a K on Google, not even on like Ancestry.com or MyHeritage or anything like that, just on Google. And the first thing I saw was a picture of your great grandmother, Irene. And I was like, whoa, what is this? What is this? And so I clicked on your website, Campanis.com, and I started reading, and I was like, wait a second, like, I think there's something here. So I tried to find your information, and it's on the website, and I emailed you, and we had a brief phone call conversation. I just said, hey, my name's Zach Zaromatidis, and I think we could have a possible relation. It says your family's from Nisyros, mine's from Nisyros, and my mom's last name was Klutsis, and I saw that your great grandmother's name was Klutsi, so maybe there's a thing there. And you gave me access to some of your information, and we put two and two together that my great grandfather Francis and your great grandmother Irene were brother and sister. So we are third cousins. Yeah, which is amazing. Like, and now we have this connection, and now and just around that time, I'd seen that video with you and with Anna on YouTube.
Anna Georgiakis.
Anna Georgiakis going through the records, and I was like, oh my God, there's a whole new world of information that you have now given me because you made that video and because you were there. Yeah. That now I'm dying to sink my teeth into, essentially. Yeah. You know. And how beautiful is that, Paul? Like, I always think, like, you know, the two of us were doing this information at separate times and separate places. And then eventually our paths just crossed for us to have this connection now, and like for us to, you know, do this together. And, you know, I always think about like my own sister, you know, like, I've always said, you know, obviously I show my sister a lot of this information. And I always tell her, like, could you imagine like a world in which like your grandkids and my grandkids don't know each other? Yeah. And it's so weird to think about. Yeah. But obviously, you know, years go on, people move, people marry other people, things happen, of course. But I always wonder, like, how beautiful. I think it's beautiful that we were able to connect again and like join families once more in the pursuit of learning more about our family.
Yeah. Yeah, and to flesh that out a bit, you know, what preceded that on my side was I was in Nisyros last summer, and I was dealing with the bills, and I had an electric bill, and I saw on the electric bill, I think it was Maria Klutsi or Irene Klutsi, I couldn't remember. So I took the bill and I went down to the demos, and I walked in. I said, "Look, I'm trying to find out some information about this person on my electric bill, and I don't speak Greek." And then it was like heaven opened, and then there's Anna Georgiakis with this big book, and she takes this big book and slaps it on the desk. And you know, Anna's got 3 master's degrees, or you know, she's incredibly educated and incredibly into genealogy. And she starts going through this book and these documents and explaining exactly who Klutz, you know, Maria and Irene Klutzi, and she gives me documents with your ancestors and my ancestors. Well, our family goes back to that house that my family has in Klefti, which is a part of Mandraki Nisyros. And so we go back to that house. It's very likely that your relatives and my relatives all lived there together. Before it went to Maria Klutzi, Irene might have grown up there with your great grandfather Dino. And you know, who knows? Francis, yeah. And so that house is a physical reminder of the progeny of Nisyros and our families. And then to really reconnect with you has just been a really beautiful thing. I first started going to Nisyros in my 20s when I was about your age, and looking in the genealogy and fixing up the properties and finding fields. And so this archaeology back into the past of our families is really a beautiful thing, and it connects people. And now we have a relationship, and maybe we'll spend time in Nisyros together with our kids and grandkids and so forth. And so and so I'm very thankful to Anna Georgiakis for being interested, for wanting to preserve these documents, for Koronos Christopoulos, who is the mayor of Nisyros, who was really helped us get the National Genealogical Society to get that off the ground, and he encouraged that. And so we're looking forward to some really good things happening with more families and more stories coming to light. And it's all about the stories. I mean, you have a story, your family has a story, my story, and my family has a story, and the stories intersect into a bigger story, you know, about how people came to America, how they fought in wars, and we're coming right off of Memorial Day right now, so your story is especially poignant, and
Well, and then there's also the what we learned was that the electric bills in Nisyros, they remain in the name of the person, even though they passed. That electric bill continues in the name of Klutz, even though it's our bill. It's just funny.
Yeah.
It's a funny little anecdote. But there was something else I was going to say. Can't remember what it is. That'll come to me in a minute. Oh shoot!
But it's a proud moment for Nisyros. It's a proud moment for Greek people that you Zach have done so well in your theater career, and that your story has caught such it's been caught up in a huge newspaper, and it's a very prominent story now, and you really highlight our homeland, and it's a very proud moment for your family, for you, for our island, and for the work of all the people like Anna and Koronios and people that have really striven to preserve the history of Nisyros. So
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I mean, like you said, like it's incredible to like do this type of thing, and then all of a sudden discover that your relation to some tiny Greek island in the middle of the Aegean Sea is like one of the most important places in your life that you've never even heard about. And now like I was planning on going this summer. I want to go this summer. Yeah, it's just because, like you said, it's like there's so much there now that is ripe. Like, how amazing would it be to go into the house of my ancestors and walk the streets they walked and swim where they swam, or ate where they ate. Like our great uncle Zacharias was owned a coffee shop. Like, does that coffee shop still exist? To go there and it's amazing. It's like, I understand. It's a calling. It's almost like a pilgrimage.
Yeah, the invitation. It's family. It's home.
Yeah.
And I've invited Zach, just for the record here, to stay at that house and to experience it, in a more personal way. And we are trying to organize a trip this summer. I think 2020 is the year of genealogy in Nisyros and around the Greek community. So many people have just done amazing work in the area of genealogy. Who's the person? Is it Patricus, the man that you've been talking to me about?
Oh, yes. John Patricus.
Take a minute to recognize his accomplishments. And
yes.
I've got someone else I want to recognize.
Of course. So John Patricus, he owns a flower shop in Astoria. We are genetically connected somehow. I discovered him through taking my heritage test. We are distant cousins somewhere down the line, but everyone in Nisyros is a distant cousin somehow. But that being said, he's crafted a family tree on my heritage that has accumulated almost 9,500 people, almost 10,000 people now at this point, full of information, full of people, full of connecting the dots, and it has pictures, which has been unbelievable. Like, he has pictures, because he was an active member of the New York Nisyrian Society in Astoria.
The Society, I think.
Yes. And in there's a ton of records and a ton of photos. They seem to have kept everything really up to date as much as they could. And I was finding pictures of my great grandfather, his brother, his wife, his kids, my grandfather, all these things. And I was able to, be like, oh, look, that's how me and Paul are related. Or look, I have these cousins I don't know about. Or there's me. That was remarkable. Because John, I actually got to speak with John a couple of weeks ago. He's actually in Nisyros right now. He got to spend his birthday there. And he was telling me these stories that I would never know, like how my great-grandmother's father, Nicholas Chrysostomos, was one of the first Nisyrians to come to America. He was known as a very brilliant, kind, open-hearted man, that any Nasirian who came to America had a place to stay if they was with him, if you know, a place to stay with him. It was cool to know that I was part of a really, he said, you come from really good roots. You have really, between the Klutsis and the Chrysostomus, you have really good roots in you. So I would have never known that had he not done that information. That's incredible stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know that's bringing me to what I remember now, that what I was going to say was that you both did your DNA test, right?
Yeah.
And so what we found out recently was, what was interesting was that he's actually more Italian than Greek. Like we all thought we're also Greek.
Yeah.
And then you also did the genealogy thing, right, as well, the DNA thing.
Yes.
And so the roots go back to southern Italy, apparently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both your and his family.
Yes. I mean, I'm more Italian than I am Greek as well. Now, my Italian perhaps maybe a little bit more or less, because my mother's mother was 100% Italian. Was 100% Italian. So so my grandfather married an Italian woman.
Now, it's important to note that the Greek Empire was encompassed Italy. So really, we are Greek, but it later became Italian. Just want to make that clear.
Of course. And, you know, like I read this really interesting thing that it's very rare to find Greek people who are 100% genetically Greek because of the Greek Empire, because of how big Alexander the Great's conquest was. It is hard to, like, for me, I'm primarily West Asian, which is most of Turkey, you know, parts of Turkey and things like that. Yeah. And that has to do with my father's side. My father is a Pontic Greek, and that's like the Black Sea region Greeks. But also just the fact that is a, geographically speaking, a really historic area. Yeah. And there's been so much intertwining of culture between North Africa and Italy and Greece and the Middle East. Like there's so much interconnected there. So as far, you know, I'll always say I'm Greek, but genetically, you know, it's a million things.
Yeah. And, you know, there's such a big team here involved too, you know, because, you know, that picture that you Googled and found of Irene Plutzi, that was from Nick Sfakianos, who took a picture of, it was on the wall in Irene, Doxopoulos' house. Irene Doxopoulos had on the wall, she's my cousin, maybe a second cousin of mine. And on the wall of her house, she had that picture, and Nick Sfakianos took the picture, gave it to me, and then I put it on the website, and then you found it. And wow. So it just shows, you know, and Nick Sfakianos is working daily, fleshing out his genealogy and helping so many other people. And so I want to, you know, really recognize Nick Sfakianos and all the work that he has done and is doing with the Gnomagora Society and with genealogy. And Chris, and I'll say this wrong, Christo has also been initiating a lot with me and offering to translate documents. And so there's just a team that's sort of coming up around this, and it's the family of Nisyros, because it's our family story, and this is our family connection. And so, yeah, I'm really hoping that we can get a group together this summer. It's early days. We're coming out of the quarantine right now. There's been tremendous loss of life in New York City. Things aren't so bad in Tennessee where I am, or in Nisyros. You know, nothing like what's happened in New York City. But we're trying to get a group of people together that would just go and be family in Nisyros, and, you know, talk to the mayor, look at the documents, talk to whoever wants to talk about genealogy. There won't be a lot of people there, perhaps, because of the travel bans. And so it'd just be a good time for a Greek family meeting, I think, in Nisyros. So we're going to try to make that happen. I'm not sure, you know, it's early days, but it's a good time to go to Nisyros and to do your genealogy. And so I just want to, you know, put that out there. And if other people are interested, let me know, and we'll try to get a date, you know, like the 2 weeks in the first 2 weeks in August, or something like that. And we'll put it out there, and whoever can converge, then do so. But
Zach, do you speak Greek?
Not at all. I've been trying to learn, like, my extent of learning Greek has been trying to translate documents. with my father, who was born in Greece but moved here when he was 3. So his Greek isn't perfect.
Yeah.
So I've been trying my best and things
Do you
like
do
that, but I would not.
Duolingo or any of those kind of things?
I've been trying Duolingo and
Yeah.
stuff, but yeah, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
not a walk in the park.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and most of the Greeks speak English, and Greek is fun to learn, and I've been learning for a long time. So sadly to say, Melanie, I married Melanie in about 2 weeks. She knew more Greek than I'd learned in 20 years.
No, no way.
Yeah, she's a linguist. So yeah,
Amazing.
I love languages. So
yeah.
we can't wait to introduce you to Nisyros and all the quirkiness of the place. It's just a really fun island.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place. I want to take you to the volcano, and I want to take you to Avlaki and to Emboryo and Nikia and Hohalaki Beach and Fat Sand Beach, Pakiamos.
There's a famous actress in England called her name will come to me in a minute. Anyway, she did a series of videos about Greece called the Greek Odyssey. Joanna Lumley, and she goes to Nisyros, and it's a BBC documentary. So you would think that they, would have done their research, and it's still a bit of a big question mark in my mind. But as an actor, you might be interested in this because the volcano, the crater of the volcano, it looks very much like the moon. And in the BBC documentary, they said that apparently Moonraker had been filmed there, the James Bond movie.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but there's question marks around it because when you talk to the people there, some people say yes, it happened, and others don't, and so you wonder whether it was just like a sort of tourist, kind of
Folklore.
folklore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's a cool island.
Yeah, I can't wait to go. I really am looking forward to it, and I can't believe how generous you have been with your information, with information about the island, and even inviting me out there to stay in your home. Like I have to thank you publicly for everything you have done for me.
Thank you. I think it's just part of the community spirit that is Greek, that is Assyrian, and that is to share. Some of the stories, in the history of the families aren't good stories, but we all own them. We deal with our own post-traumatic stress disorder, from the dysfunction in our families, but also the love and the good things in our families, and the love, definitely triumphs over the dysfunction, and there are so many stories that have yet to be told, and I can think of many. I know as we talk about this, I won't go into them now, but there are many other stories of our Greek relatives that came to America, that stayed in Greece, that have just amazing stories that we want to tell. And in an environment like this, and it's all about the stories. Everyone loves a good story. The kids love it, the adults love it. And so we need to tell these stories. And so I just want to know, Zach, by way of furthering your story, what has God really put on your heart as far as just wanting to further the story, and what other outcomes do you really envision, as you go forward with your story as a young man?
Yeah, I mean, beyond just going as far back as I can, I've been thinking a lot about making the story public and trying my best, like you said, sharing the story. So whether that's in the medium of a documentary I make myself, or writing a play about it or something like that, like you had brought up, it seems like a great idea. So I want to be able to. I know this story has made such a profound impact on me, especially with my uncle Nico. And there's only more story to tell, and there's only more information to discover. So, I mean, I just think about how beautiful of a story is it that, two distant cousins reunite to go back to the island and find their heritage together. That in itself is a beautiful story. So like, I hope to one day, be able to share that in some type of medium, whether that is a play or even a documentary or something like that. I think that's the next move. But all I know is that, like, I always think about, like, eventually, one day when I have kids, they'll be able to see everything, and they'll be able to, like, we already did the work for them in a sense. So like they'll be able to see where they come from and how far it goes, and just how important that is. And these little stories, like these little, like, your great grandfather being like I watched that video that you and Nick made about your great grandfather, speaking at church and being in charge of a pastry store and things like that. Like these are those little stories, or my great great grandfather being a kind of the godfather of Nisyros, so to speak. Like these are things I want to keep sharing, and I think that's why God has put me on this path to somehow share this story. I mean, I shared that photo of all my military relatives in the Hellenic genealogy geek group, and they got a bunch of likes, and a bunch of people are sharing their stories now. Yeah. It's those little things that I think I get the thrill of.
Yeah, well, your gift is acting and portraying stories, and you've had a big impact, and I've seen all the attention that your story's gotten. It's amazing, and I commend you for that. My gift is computer technology. I own an IT firm, and I like to document things and make things available in retrieval systems and databases, and I'm really good at that. And one of my hopes is that that a team at the Nisyros demos can help us to really get these documents online and enable other Greek people and the Syrian people to tell their story. And I think it'd really be a great form of tourism for the island. I mean, people would be learning about their connection to Nisyros, that their great-great-grandparents were born there, and they'd come back. And those are the kind of tourism, that's the kind of tourism we really like in Nisyros, because they're family. They belong there, they're from there, and they'll take care of the place. They'll be respectful. They'll be like family. And so I'm really hoping that we can do more work on the technology side, getting these documents available and online. And who knows, where this will take us. We might be having to go to Italy and find out, where in Italy, and find the records in Italy to go back to the next chapter. But we need to, we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. But right now, it's all converging on Mandrake Nisyros, where those documents are kept. So
I think it was a great tip that you were given to change the spelling when you were doing your search, because our name is our last name is Campanis. It's spelled with a C here, but originally it was spelled with a K, because in the Greek language there is no letter C. So I'm just sort of wanting to say that, just in case there's other people that listen to this video and they're trying to do the same thing. If their name starts with a C, they might want to try the K.
Yeah. And another great tip for genealogy people is, if your relatives came to America and applied for naturalization, you can file a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request, and get I got so many documents back about 20 years ago of my grandmother, my grandfather, and so many other people. And that's readily available. And a lot of that's on Ancestry.com if you pay for the subscription. But you can get those documents, and they are amazing documents, because they had to file all of their documents. And so those documents made it out of Nisyros, and they are in the archives of the United States of America, as they applied for, Social Security cards, as they applied for to become U.S. citizens, etc.
Yeah, I just filed for mine online after we had spoke. I went on the FOIA.gov and filed for it myself. It's currently pending. So I'm excited to actually get those in-hand documents right now.
Yeah.
I was going to let you know that when I was in Nisyros, I think it must have been about, 8 or 9 years ago, there was a lady I found out was 105. And but I found out like the day before we were leaving to go, and I wasn't able to try and track her down, because it fascinates me, people that live that long. I want to talk to them and find out what's your secret and everything. And so as we were leaving the island on the boat, I was like praying like that she would still be around the following year, and she was. And so I got to go to her bedside and talk to her. Like my Greek is not that good, but her granddaughter came with me and translated, and I was able to ask all these questions. And it was just such a rich story. I've got it written down somewhere. I can send you a copy of it, but just
We need to do a video of it.
But the highlights were that she came to Nisyros at the age of 7 to work. Like she was living on the island of Kos, which is where you fly into to get to Nisyros. And it's only like an hour's boat ride from, I mean, you can see Kos from Nisyros. And so she came over to work at the age of 7, and she was actually nursed by a goat in Kos because her mother wasn't able to nurse her. I think maybe she had a lot of other kids or something. And so that's the only reason why she didn't, like she stopped nursing from the goat, because she left to come to Nisyros. And then they had no shoes. They were kind of like walking around. She was working on the, I guess, in the fields. In Nisyros, there's like a lot of terraced gardens. So I imagine that's where she was working. And then she had like 9 children. And at the age of 40, her husband died, had a heart attack in front of all the kids, like, because it was like they lived in a 1-bedroomed house, like most Nisyrian families probably did. And what was the other thing? She tore all the hair of her head out at that point, because she's like, what am I going to do? Like, it was unacceptable to sort of remarry ever. I think from just Greek culture, it's like, that's not accepted. And so it was, but the family survived, and she survived. That was the amazing thing, is that she survived. I think she died at 107. They were never actually completely sure how old she was because they didn't have documents. But she was just such a beautiful lady. And I remember her hands were so soft. Like she reached out to me and was so welcoming when I got to meet her. And I was like, how's this woman got such soft hands? I found out because I had to go to the restroom in the middle of talking to her. And she had this olive oil soap. So I was like, maybe that's And then there was something. Oh, and she was kind of blind, and she was still crocheting. Like she had her crochet by the side of her. And I love to crochet and knit. So that was another kind of cool thing that I was like, okay, even when I'm blind, I can still crochet.
Yeah.
So,
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really cool.
So I guess we should wind it up pretty soon here. Do you have anything else to say, Zach?
No, I don't. Well, you know what crossed my mind?
Yeah.
No, crossed my mind.
Okay, good, Tom.
Yeah, well, I think I fast forward a little bit. My great grandfather, I discovered. So I'm a guitar player. I've been playing guitar since.
That's right.
My great grandfather was a mandolin player, and apparently he used to, when he would come home from work, he was a jeweler in New York City, and he would come home from work and play his mandolin for my grandfather and his siblings. I thought that was such a beautiful story. And my uncle Frank, who is my great grandfather's namesake, he is a master guitar player. He's quite incredible, and he's kind of the reason I picked it up myself. And I know that on your side of the family, that your son is a guitar player, and that your great uncle was a guitar player.
My grandfather, your mandolin player.
That's right. So like, so even still, there must be some kind of musical gene that runs through. My sister is a guitar player as well. Yeah. So, and I've been doing research on my father's side of the family now, which has been more difficult because a lot of moving. And she had seen, the Washington Post article and that I'm a musician and all that stuff. And she said, well, I saw all that stuff, and you definitely don't get it from our side of the family. So it's definitely the other side. And I said, well, it turns out it actually is. So, so there's that little tidbit of information that, the music gene runs strong. And
sounds like you need to make a trip to Nashville, Music City.
I know. I always wanted to go, and I was pretty far away when the tour was in Tennessee. I was all the way in
Knoxville.
I forgot where I was.
wanted to come to that show. I wanted to come to that show so bad. And he was like, "Oh, it's really a long way." I'm like, "Honey, we can do it."
I know how far it was. I wish we were stopping in Nashville. You would think, such a big spot, especially for a show with music. But I have a band too. We've been thinking about going to Nashville before, so maybe we'll be there. Maybe we'll be in Nashville before. Maybe we'll meet in Nashville and then go to Nisyros.
Well, I got room for you in your band.
Yeah. Well, how's the whole band? Last May we were hosting couch surfers. We had like I don't know, how many did we have at one point?
Oh, man, a lot.
We had about
6.
7 or 10 people at once staying with us, like from all day. It was just crazy.
Yeah, they're just
We were
trying to
so
make it
Oh my
amusing.
God.
Yeah.
Oh
All
my
right.
God. Wow.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. We'll wind it up there. Thank you, Zach, for telling your story. And think of other stories where we can do this again anytime. And yeah, so it's been great. And thanks for watching. And I'll stop the recording now. And
Thank you, Paul.
yeah.